For 20 consecutive years, John Miller watched the horizon bleed red over the valley he called home. He was just a rancher, armed with nothing but calloused hands, a failing tractor, and a debt that grew heavier with every drought. When the Blackwood Syndicate, a ruthless multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerate, marched into his valley with bulldozers, legal team enforcers, and armed private security, everyone knew the fight was rigged. John couldn't fight back. He lacked the money, the muscle, and the influence. They beat him, broke his fences, and left him for dead in the dust. But they made one fatal mistake. They pushed him off the ridge into the forgotten, uncharted cavern beneath his own ancestral soil, unlocking a hidden, terrifying global secret that instantly transformed a broken old rancher into the most dangerous, untouchable man on the planet. The valley had a way of swallowing secrets, but it had an even better way of preserving them. To understand how John Miller went from a defenseless old man begging for a bank extension to a figure capable of bringing a global empire to its absolute knees, you have to understand the sheer, suffocating desperation of his reality just 12 hours before the discovery. John wasn't a hero. He was a tired 62-year-old widower whose joints ached when the cold front rolled over the jagged peaks of the northern ridge. His ranch, the Silver Creek homestead, was a patch of unforgiving dirt that had been in his family for 3 generations, but tradition doesn't pay the interest rates. Contrast that with the Blackwood Syndicate. They didn't just buy land, they erased communities. Led by a cold, calculating executive named Marcus Vance, the syndicate specialized in aggressive land acquisition. To them, John's ranch wasn't a home, it was a geographical roadblock sitting directly on top of a multi-state pipeline corridor. For months, Vance had sent letters. Then came the lowball financial offers, which John promptly tore up. Then came the subtle, terrifying shifts in reality, water lines mysteriously drying up overnight, livestock fences being cleanly cut with industrial wire cutters in the dead of winter, and local law enforcement suddenly turning a blind eye whenever John called to report the harassment. The system was completely bought and paid for. John was entirely alone, trapped in a modern-day feudal system where the lords wore tailored Italian suits and carried briefcases instead of broadswords. The tipping point arrived on a Tuesday evening when the sky was the color of bruised iron. A convoy of 3 black, armored SUVs tore through John's front gate, completely shattering the hand-carved wooden archway his grandfather had built. Out stepped Marcus Vance, flanked by 4 private security contractors carrying tactical gear. They didn't come to negotiate this time. They brought a forged foreclosure notice, backed by a corrupt county judge's signature, demanding John vacate the premises immediately. When John refused to sign the voluntary surrender papers, Vance didn't argue. He simply nodded to his men. What followed was a display of unmitigated, brutal corporate dominance. They didn't use guns, they used fists and heavy-duty batons, making sure to leave marks that a corrupt local coroner could easily attribute to an accidental fall. John fought with everything he had, swinging a rusted iron wrench, but age and numbers were heavily against him. They shattered his ribs, broke his jaw, and dragged his bleeding, semi-conscious body to the very edge of the northern ridge, the highest, most barren boundary of his property. With a final, mocking sneer, Vance personally shoved the broken rancher over the steep, rocky drop-off, watching him tumble down into the dark, jagged ravine below. They assumed the elements, or the fall itself, would finish what they started, allowing them to claim the land via abandonment by morning. But as John rolled down the jagged limestone incline, his body didn't smash against the valley floor. Instead, the ground literally gave way beneath him. A fragile crust of ancient, overgrown earth collapsed under his weight, plunging him into a pitch-black, subterranean void that hadn't seen the light of day for centuries. As he lay there in the damp, freezing darkness, coughing up blood and gasping for air, he realized he wasn't dead. The air smelled strange, not like dirt or stagnant water, but metallic, heavily ionized, and humming with an inexplicable, vibrant energy that made the hairs on his arms stand up. Slowly, painfully, John dragged himself across the smooth, unnaturally cold stone floor of the hidden cavern. His trembling hands brushed against something that didn't belong in nature, smooth, reinforced titanium plating, humming softly with an active, pulsing blue subterranean current. He hadn't just fallen into a cave. He had stumbled directly into a buried, highly classified, pre-war automated military command bunker, an apocalyptic vault containing advanced cybernetic blueprints, autonomous defense drone networks, and encrypted financial ledger access keys that had been completely lost to global history. The very land the Blackwood Syndicate was trying to steal wasn't valuable because of a pipeline corridor. It was valuable because it was the literal lockbox to the ultimate global power leverage point, and the Syndicate had just accidentally handed the key directly to the one man who had absolutely nothing left to lose. John looked at the glowing control console reflecting in his blood-soaked vision, and for the first time in 20 years, the broken old rancher smiled. The pulsing blue ambient light of the hidden underground bunker cast sharp, ghostly shadows across John Miller's bruised face. His ribs throbbed with every shallow breath, but the sheer shock of what lay before him acted as a powerful psychological anesthetic. He wasn't looking at a simple storm cellar or a forgotten mining shaft. This was a massive, multi-tiered subterranean command center, built with architectural precision that defied modern public knowledge. Columns of reinforced carbon fiber plating stretched high into the cavern ceiling, supporting rows of dormant, military-grade computer mainframes. The soft, rhythmic hum vibrating through the titanium floor tiles resonated deep within his chest. Slowly, using a low-hanging metal console for leverage, John dragged his broken body to his feet. The moment his blood-stained palm made direct contact with the central console's touch-sensitive interface, the dormant facility violently surged to life. A cascading wave of emerald-green data streams flashed across a massive, wraparound panoramic display wall. Automated vocal synthesizers, speaking in a sterile, authoritative military tone, echoed through the cavernous space, genetic profile recognized. Lineage confirmation, Miller, John. Universal administrative access granted. Project Iron Vanguard online. John stumbled back, his breath catching in his throat. His mind raced back to his childhood, remembering his eccentric grandfather's cryptic bedtime stories about a great silent guardian buried beneath the valley's ridge, stories John had dismissed for decades as the rambling delusions of a paranoid, retired Cold War engineer. But it wasn't a delusion. His family hadn't just homesteaded this ranch, they had been its sworn, generational guardians. The Blackwood Syndicate thought they were stealing a simple plot of agricultural dirt from a defenseless old man, completely blind to the reality that they had just forced the rightful heir back into the cockpit of the world's most sophisticated, forgotten defense network. The central display wall rapidly shifted, organizing millions of chaotic data points into highly digestible, terrifyingly clear visual intelligence reports. John watched in absolute disbelief as the screen displayed real-time, high-resolution satellite tracking feeds of his own ranch. He could see the 3 black, armored SUVs belonging to the Syndicate parked carelessly near his barn. He could see Marcus Vance's security contractors patrolling his perimeter with flashlight beams cutting through the midnight gloom. But the data didn't stop at local surveillance. The system automatically bypassed global firewalls, opening a direct window into the deepest, darkest secrets of the Blackwood Syndicate itself. Encrypted financial ledgers, illegal offshore accounts, shell corporation networks, and classified corporate espionage operations laid themselves completely bare before John's eyes. For years, the Syndicate had used their immense wealth to bribe local politicians, manipulate regional judges, and forcibly erase anyone who stood in the way of their corporate empire. They operated with total impunity because they controlled the paper trail. But Project Iron Vanguard didn't just observe the world's digital infrastructure, it completely dominated it. As John dug deeper into the interface, the system presented him with an inventory of tactical assets that felt like pure science fiction. Beneath this primary command deck lay a fully automated manufacturing bay containing advanced, cloaked surveillance drones, non-lethal electromagnetic pulse arrays, and hyper-targeted acoustic frequency disruptors designed to neutralize entire hostile task forces without firing a single kinetic bullet. The Syndicate had spent months using brutal, physical intimidation tactics against John. Assuming he was a primitive relic of the past who could be broken with basic physical violence. They had absolutely no idea that the broken old man they threw into a ravine now possessed the digital and technological capability to completely bankrupt their corporation, expose their criminal networks to global intelligence agencies, and physically freeze their operations with the strike of a single keystroke. John stood taller now, the agonizing pain in his broken ribs completely fading beneath an overwhelming surge of absolute, calculated resolve. He realized that fighting back against a multi-billion-dollar empire didn't require him to match their physical numbers or engage in a conventional war of attrition. The syndicate's greatest weakness was their absolute reliance on digital connectivity, corrupt legal filings, and their arrogant belief that they were completely invisible to the consequences of their actions. They had built their entire empire on a foundation of lies and intimidation, but John was now holding the ultimate truth machine. He approached the main tactical interface, his calloused, dirt-stained fingers hovering over the glowing activation sequence. The system prompted him for a primary objective. John didn't want simple revenge, he wanted absolute justice for his family, his valley, and every single neighbor the Blackwood Syndicate had destroyed over the last 2 decades. He selected a multi-phase tactical response code labeled Systemic Deconstruction. Instantly, the bunker's secondary reactors roared to life with a deep, powerful growl. High-frequency communication antennae disguised as ancient rock formations on the northern ridge began transmitting powerful, localized data packets. The first phase of John's counteroffensive didn't involve physical weapons or loud explosions. It was a silent, devastating digital strike. The bunker's quantum processors began systematically dismantling the Blackwood Syndicate's local infrastructure. Cutting off their communications, blinding their security cameras, and preparing a massive financial trap that would spring shut the moment Marcus Vance attempted to file the forged foreclosure documents at the county clerk's office the following morning. John watched the green progress bars fill up on the panoramic screen, a cold, unwavering expression settling over his weathered face. The hunters had officially become the prey, and they hadn't even noticed the trap closing around them. By 3 a.m., the upper world remained completely oblivious to the digital execution order that had just been signed beneath the earth. Up on the surface, Marcus Vance sat inside the warmth of his armored SUV, sipping expensive scotch from a crystal tumbler, fully believing the Silver Creek homestead was finally his. His private security guards stood outside, laughing under the stars, smoking cigarettes, and occasionally kicking John's old tools into the dirt. They thought they had won a simple war of attrition against an old man. They had no idea that beneath their boots, John Miller was orchestrating a surgical, multi-tiered corporate execution. John initiated the second phase of the Systemic Deconstruction protocol. With a precise sequence of commands, the bunker's quantum array initiated an aggressive, untraceable short-selling sequence across global financial markets, targeted specifically at the Blackwood Syndicate's primary holding companies. Simultaneously, the system initiated a massive, automated data dump. Hundreds of gigabytes of encrypted files, containing internal emails detailing illegal land seizures, proof of bribed politicians, toxic waste dumping records, and the forged foreclosure documents for John's ranch, were instantly transmitted to the secure servers of federal regulatory agencies, major international news outlets, and aggressive activist investor groups simultaneously. Contrast this with the syndicate's local operations. Vance's satellite phones suddenly lost connectivity, showing a bizarre, flashing error code that his high-priced tech team back in New York couldn't decipher. One by one, the dashboards of the 3 armored SUVs went completely dark, their internal computers completely locked down by an unbypassable, military-grade rootkit. The private security guards noticed their encrypted tactical radios filling with nothing but deafening, high-pitched static that made them rip their earpieces out in pain. The corporate predators were being rapidly blinded, isolated, and stripped of their electronic nervous system, completely unaware that the source of the disruption was right beneath their feet. Down in the command deck, John watched the real-time panic unfold on his surveillance monitors. He felt no anger, only an icy, calculated focus. The system then alerted him that a manufacturing cycle had finished. A hidden pneumatic wall slid open, revealing 3 sleek, matte black tactical reconnaissance drones. Unlike commercial drones, these machines operated on advanced acoustic cancellation propulsion systems, making them entirely silent as they hovered into the air. They were equipped with non-lethal, high-intensity electromagnetic pulse emitters and directional acoustic disruptors capable of inducing intense vertigo and disorientation in targets without leaving a single permanent mark. John guided the drones through an automated ventilation shaft that exited out into the rock formations overlooking his homestead. The silent machines drifted into the night sky, positioning themselves perfectly above the syndicate's camp like invisible birds of prey. John wasn't going to hide in the bunker forever. He was going to walk right back up that ridge and face the people who tried to destroy him, but this time, he was bringing the absolute, unmatched authority of Project Iron Vanguard with him. He accessed the facility's medical bay, where automated localized cellular regeneration fields rapidly stabilized his broken ribs and wrapped his torso in a flexible, lightweight kinetic compression mesh. The physical pain was instantly reduced to a dull, manageable ache. John then put on an integrated tactical earpiece that connected him directly to the bunker's artificial intelligence assistant, allowing him to issue voice commands to the drone fleet and digital arrays on the fly. He picked up his old, rusted iron wrench from the floor, the same one he had used to fight them off hours earlier, not as a weapon, but as a symbolic reminder of the contrast between their arrogant corporate tech and his unyielding resilience. As the first morning light began to crack over the eastern horizon, painting the valley in shades of cold orange and gray, Marcus Vance stepped out of his SUV, visibly frustrated by the total lack of cellular service and communication. He ordered his 4 security guards to pack up the gear and prepare to drive down to the local courthouse to finalize the land deed registration. But as the men approached the vehicles, the engines suddenly roared to life on their own, the doors automatically locked from the inside, and the headlights began flashing erratically in a terrifying, synchronized pattern. The guards drew their sidearms, spinning around in absolute confusion, scanning the empty landscape for an enemy they couldn't see. "What is going on?" Vance shouted, his usual corporate composure completely shattering as he looked at his bricked, useless $1 million vehicles. Right then, a lone, dark silhouette appeared at the crest of the northern ridge, walking slowly and deliberately through the morning mist. Vance squinted, adjusting his designer glasses, his heart skipping a beat as the figure came into focus. It was John Miller. His clothes were torn and stained with dried blood, but he wasn't limping. He wasn't broken. He walked with the heavy, unshakable confidence of a king inspecting his territory, holding his old iron wrench tightly in his right hand. The guards raised their weapons, but before they could even disengage their safeties, John simply whispered a single, calm word into his earpiece: "Authorize." The moment the word left John's lips, the air above the ridge vibrated with a terrifying, low-frequency hum. Before the security guards could even process the sound, a blinding flash of invisible electromagnetic energy erupted from the sky. The tactical handguns and rifles in their grip sparked violently, their electronic sights frying instantly as the intense localized EMP wave rendered every piece of their advanced gear completely useless. The guards dropped their weapons, cursing in agony as the metal handles burned their palms. At the exact same microsecond, the silent drones hovering overhead deployed their directional acoustic disruptors, hitting the men with a hyper-targeted sound wave that attacked their inner ears. The guards stumbled blindly, dropping to their knees on the gravel, clutching their heads as intense vertigo completely stripped them of their balance. They couldn't stand, they couldn't fight, and they couldn't comprehend how a simple old farmer was manipulating the laws of physics around them. Marcus Vance fell back against the hood of his locked SUV, his face completely pale, his eyes wide with an absolute, primal terror. He looked at John, who was now standing merely 10 feet away, completely untouched by the chaotic forces bringing his elite security team to their knees. What are you?" Vance stammered, his voice trembling as he looked at the glowing blue light emanating from the subtle tactical earpiece nestled in John's ear. John didn't answer right away. He simply tossed the rusted iron wrench onto the hood of the SUV with a loud, metallic clang that made Vance jump. "I'm the owner of this ranch," John said, his voice incredibly calm, yet carrying a booming resonance that seemed to echo through the entire valley. "And you are currently trespassing on government-sanctioned sovereign soil." But the true genius of John's counterstrike wasn't happening on this dirt ridge, it was happening across the global digital landscape, creating a series of massive open loops that were currently triggering a catastrophic domino effect for the Blackwood Syndicate worldwide. As Vance sat trapped in the valley, his personal encrypted tablet suddenly flashed to life, displaying a cascade of urgent, red alert notifications that bypassed his system's lockdown. The open loop had officially been pulled wide open. The first notification revealed that the Blackwood Syndicate's trading stock was currently in a state of absolute, unprecedented freefall on the New York Stock Exchange. Because of the quantum short-selling algorithm John had initiated from the bunker, combined with the automatic leak of the company's deeply illegal internal documents, the market had completely panicked. Billions of dollars of corporate valuation were evaporating into thin air with every passing second. But the nightmare went far deeper than a simple financial crash. The second notification on Vance's screen was an encrypted video feed from the syndicate's global headquarters in Manhattan. Real-time footage showed federal agents, backed by international cybercrimes divisions, actively breaching the glass doors of the Blackwood corporate tower, seizing mainframes, and placing senior executives in handcuffs. The anonymous data dump provided by Project Iron Vanguard was so mathematically precise, so completely irrefutable, that global law enforcement had no choice but to act immediately to freeze every single asset associated with the company. The Blackwood Syndicate was being systematically erased from existence, all because they chose to bully the wrong rancher in an isolated valley. Vance stared at the screen, his mouth open in utter disbelief as he watched his entire life's work, his wealth, and his absolute immunity crumble into dust in less than 5 minutes. He looked up at John, his arrogance completely replaced by absolute desperation. "How did you get this information?" Vance whispered, tears of panic welling in his eyes. "Who gave this to you?" "This data, it's locked behind government-grade quantum encryption. Nobody on Earth has the keys to those servers." John leaned in close, his weathered face reflecting in Vance's expensive designer sunglasses. "The people who built the world you think you control," John whispered softly, "left me the keys." But just as the victory seemed absolute, a sudden, piercing red warning light flashed within John's tactical earpiece, accompanied by an urgent, synthetic voice transmission from the bunker below. "Warning. Secondary automated global security protocol triggered. Unauthorized network intrusion detected from an external, unknown deep state entity. Origin location, classified subsector 7. John's eyes narrowed as the panoramic intelligence feed synced to his earpiece showed a massive, highly sophisticated, unregistered military convoy suddenly redirecting its route, turning off the interstate highway, and heading directly toward his valley at high speed. This wasn't the Blackwood Syndicate. This was an entirely different, shadowy global organization that had been silently monitoring Project Iron Vanguard's dormant signature for over half a century. By activating the bunker to save his ranch, John hadn't just defeated his immediate corporate competitor, he had accidentally illuminated a massive global beacon, alerting the world's most powerful, hidden deep state factions to the exact coordinates of the ultimate weapon. The immediate battle for the Silver Creek homestead was over, but an infinitely larger, more dangerous shadow war for the control of human history had just begun. The dust of the valley had settled, but the digital atmosphere was burning. Marcus Vance and his guards lay completely neutralized on the gravel, stripped of their power, waiting for the federal authorities to arrive and haul them away into a world of endless litigation and concrete cells. They were no longer the predators. They were just the first casualties of a much larger, invisible conflict that had just been awakened beneath the soil of the Silver Creek homestead. John Miller stood at the edge of the ridge, his eyes fixed on the distant highway where the headlights of an unknown, shadowy deep state entity were rapidly cutting through the early morning fog. He had won the battle against the corporation, but the true war for the control of Project Iron Vanguard had only just begun. Think about the sheer scale of what just happened. A single man, backed into a corner, completely transformed the balance of global power by tapping into a hidden truth right beneath his feet. It forces us to ask a profound question about the world we live in today: how much of our history, and how much of our land, is built on top of secrets designed to remain buried forever. If you look around your own town, your own county, or even the old abandoned structures on the outskirts of your city, you have to wonder what lies just a few feet beneath the surface. Is the ground beneath us truly just dirt and stone, or is it a vault of forgotten power waiting for the right person to stumble into the dark? The story of John Miller isn't just a story about a rancher who fought back, it's a stark reminder that the systems of control we think are absolute, the corporations, the crooked politicians, the massive financial conglomerates, are incredibly fragile when confronted with the ultimate truth. Let's open this up to the community because this is where things get truly fascinating. Put yourself directly in John Miller's boots for a second. You're a broken, tired rancher who has just been pushed off a cliff by a ruthless corporate executive. You fall into the dark, and suddenly, you find yourself holding the digital keys to a forgotten military superpower. You have the ability to systematically bankrupt your enemies, expose their deepest crimes to the world, and completely rewrite the global financial system with a single keystroke. Would you use that power purely for justice and self-defense, just like John did? Or would the sudden, absolute power corrupt you, tempting you to take over the very corporate empires that tried to destroy you in the first place? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. I want to see how many of you would walk the path of absolute justice versus how many of you would build your own empire from the ashes of the old one. We read every single comment, and the most creative, strategic breakdown of how to use the Iron Vanguard bunker will be pinned right at the very top of the video for everyone to see. This story is far from over. The mysterious military convoy from Subsector 7 is closing in on the valley, and John's tactical earpiece is already lighting up with a secondary countdown timer that could change the fate of the entire modern world. If you want to see exactly how John handles a highly trained, deep-state shadow army using nothing but the ancient, automated defenses of his grandfather's bunker, you need to make sure you're locked in for part 2. Do not let the algorithm hide the conclusion of this story from you. Take a fraction of a second right now to smash that subscribe button. Hit the like button to help this story break through the corporate algorithms, and click that notification bell so you are instantly alerted the exact second the next chapter drops. The system tried to bury John Miller, but he came back with the power of a god. Make sure you're here to see if he can keep it. See you in the next episode.